Franky Doyle, a character with a lethal temper, a character who you just don't cross, a character who is loyal to the people who follow her, one of the few characters who eventually was released where we ended up following her journey on the outside, a character who most of us loved, despite a few wobbly moments in Season 2. Let's take a look at Franky Doyle, a ranking special. Hey guys, welcome back to Wentworth Live and welcome back to another Wentworth ranking video. Now, in today's video, I am going to be ranking Franky Doyle. I noticed Franky's name pop up quite a few times in the comments box in my last ranking video, so Franky Doyle it is. Now Franky, she's definitely one of those characters where my personal opinion changed quite a few times throughout the show's run. There were moments where I loved Franky, and there's also moments where I completely hated her. I am happy, however, that Franky eventually did end up getting a happy ending, which of course is quite rare in the world of Wentworth. So guys, get yourself comfy and let's jump straight in. Okay then, so starting this one off today is 5 Franky Doyle moments. So at number 5, and it is Franky beats up Juice and her crew. This happens in season 3, and this is when Franky literally turns into a ninja, and I can remember just being like, wow, when I first saw this scene, and every time I go back and rewatch it, I'm just like always just loving every moment of it. Coming in at number 4, and it is Franky crushes Jack's hand. Now, I've recently done an episode review of season 1 where this happened, and it's just one of those moments where you're literally cheering. I love how Franky, she says this one's for B just before she does it, and I'm like, yeah, brilliant moment. At number 3, and it is, of course, Franky fights B. Now, I know Franky does lose this fight, but she puts up a pretty, good fight against B, and it could have gone either way. But on this occasion, B got the upper hand, which of course we were all loving because Franky was getting too big for her boots. But it's a pretty big, and it's one of the best fight scenes on Wentworth, so I just had to put this into the list. At number 2. And it is Frankie Visits B. How mad that at number 3 Franky's fighting her, and at number 2 Franky is visiting B, and this happens in season 4 after B is almost murdered by Joan Ferguson, and B is on a real downer in this episode, and Franky comes to visit B to perk her up, and give her a bit of a boost, and I just love it when they look at each other and they smile and they hug, and then B tells Franky about Ali, and Franky's like, wow, I always knew you had it in you, and it's just really nice scene. At number 1, and it is Franky and Bridget's first kiss. So this is when Franky is released at the end of season 3, and of course Bridget turns up as the hot girl in a hot car, which is what Franky really wanted, and they finally kiss, and yeah, it's just the perfect ending for Franky if that had been her final scene on the show. But as we all know, she did come back, but yeah, just love this moment. Okay, 5 Franky Doyle quotes. So at number 5, because I'm freezing my vinegar tits off. This is a great moment. Once again, I think this is in season 3 when Cindy Lou and Tina and her crew, they're after Franky because Franky's lost the drugs, and basically Franky was trying to purposely get slotted, and yeah, she basically smashed up the library and said this to Vera. Brilliant. At number 4, and it's, you sure he didn't turn on the inside? Probably the best fuck he's had in his life. This is in season 1 when Jax is bragging about her husband Vinny coming out of prison, and this is what Franky says to her in the laundry. I just love it. Every time I go back and rewatch, I'm always waiting for this quote to come out of Franky's mouth. At number 3, and it's Consider Yourself Bitch Slapped. This is, of course, when Frankie bitch slaps Kim for being a bit of a bitch to Frankie, and yeah, just love this quote. Always, it lives rent-free in my head. At number 2, and it is I don't eat sausage, I'm a vegetarian. And this is, of course, in season 2, I believe. This is when Frankie stabbed, I think, is it Batesy in the groin and, castrated him when he was trying to rape him. And this is Frankie basically telling her lawyer, she doesn't eat the sausage. Brilliant. At number 1, and it is, of course, I want to be picked up by a hot girl in a hot car and driven off into the sunset. This one is just, I just love it. I honestly feel that this is a quote that I will just always remember forever. Like, if somebody was to say, pick your all-time top 10 quotes on Wentworth, this one would be high up. It might even be one of the first ones that I think of. I just absolutely love it. And this is, of course, when Bridget fell in love with Frankie, because Bridget actually tells Frankie this in season 6. I'm like, it just makes this quote even more memorable. Okay, top 3 Franky Doyle episodes, or episodes that heavily featured Frankie storylines. So at number 3, and it is The Girl Who Waited, season 1, episode 3. This is, of course, the episode that is pretty much dedicated to Frankie, where we learn about her backstory, why she's in prison, the crime she committed, and what happened during her childhood. It was always going to make this list because I honestly think that Nicole's acting in this particular episode is off the scale. At number 2, and it is A Higher Court, season 3, episode 10. This is the episode where Frankie is basically going up for her parole meeting, and so at the same time, this is where Will learns that Frankie was the one who killed his wife, Meg Jackson. But I also feel this is the episode where Frankie really turned a corner for me. It was the moment where she grew up. It was the moment where she completely, just grew as a character for the better, in my opinion. She ends up, hugging Liz and crying into her arms towards the end of the episode, and these two make up after, a whole season of, not really getting on. And, yeah, I just love this episode. At number 1, and it is Bleed Out, season 6, episode 3. This is, of course, the aftermath of Frankie getting shot by the police, but it's also it's a proper, heavily Frankie/Bridget episode, and this is where you see, how much Bridget does love Frankie. She's crossing the line, and she continues to cross the line throughout this episode. It's very intense. We're waiting to see if Frankie's gonna live or die, and is she gonna be able to prove her innocence, all rolled into one. And yeah, it's also the episode where Frankie says her goodbyes to the women for the very last time. Okay, 3 Frankie Doyle storylines that I wish had happened. So coming in at number 3, and this is more of a personal preference, but I really wanted Frankie to teach Sonia a lesson before she escaped in season 5. There's a really awesome scene where Frankie pretty much goes to Sonia and tells her to stay away from Liz, otherwise she will snap her like a twig, which I just absolutely love. And I would have loved to have seen Frankie maybe shove Sonia's head down the toilet or something, just something, because Sonia was torturing Liz at this stage, and I just would have really liked to have seen Frankie do something to Sonia before she escaped. At number 2, and it is a prequel. Now, what I mean about this is I would have loved to have seen a little bit of a prequel on Frankie when she first arrives into prison. I would have loved to have seen her induction. I would have liked to have seen her introduction to Boomer and how they became friends, and with Doreen as well, and Liz, and her first meeting with Jax and how that, that war began. I would have loved to have seen some of that. And at number 1 is a Frankie and Bridget wedding. These two are for life, in my opinion. They are literally, true love never speaks in more words than with these two characters. So I would have liked to have seen a Frankie and Bridget wedding at some stage in the show. Okay, Frankie Doyle sad funny moments. So coming in at number 3, Frankie meets her sister for the very first time. Now, I believe this is in season 4, and this is when Frankie goes to the park and her little sister is on the swing being pushed by her dad, and when they first meet, oh my god, I don't know what it is, it just sends tears straight through my eyes. Not because it's a sad moment, it's just so beautiful, and I think it's something that Frankie really wanted as well. So yeah, this one always gets to me, but in a good way. At number 2, and it's Dance With Me. So this is when Frankie is back in season 5, and she's had a little bit of a fallout with Boomer, and Boomer's upset, and she's lying on her bed, and Frankie comes in to apologise, and you know, Frankie then jumps on top of Boomer and gives her a massive hug, and then they start like swaying in the bed together, and Frankie's saying "Dance With Me." For me, this is like a moment that I love. It also makes me giggle, but it also makes me feel emotional, all rolled into one. So this is why this one is on the list. And at number 1, it shouldn't be no surprise, but Frankie's final goodbye. This is probably one of the saddest moments in the show that doesn't involve a death scene. But yeah, of course, it's all due to that song that they're playing in the background, which, by the way, is a song that me and Peter are using in our wedding. So this actually means so much more to me than just appearing on the show. But yeah, this is just honestly one of the saddest Franky Doyle moments in my personal opinion. Okay, so Franky Doyle, who do I think that Frankie would fuck, marry and kill? Okay, so I think Frankie's gonna marry Bridget Westfall for obvious reasons that I've already said in the video. But who do I think Franky Doyle would fuck? I'm gonna put Erica Davidson down, because before Bridget appeared on the scene, Frankie had it bad for Erica. So this is why I reckon Frankie would fuck Erica just for fun, and then she'll marry Bridget later on down the line. And who is she gonna kill? Well, I'm gonna remain this is the same as B. Smith's one, and that is Joan Ferguson, because Joan didn't only make B's life hell, she made Frankie's life just as hell. So I definitely reckon Frankie would have really enjoyed to kill Joan Ferguson at some point. Okay, Franky Doyle. What happened next to Frankie after she left the prison in season 6? Okay, so this is what I reckon happened next. The last time we see Frankie in season 6, after she is released, she meets her dad and her sister at the park with that kite scene. Now, Frankie's relationship with her dad and her sister would have continued to grow, and Frankie would have been an amazing big sister, and Frankie and Bridget would have had them over for dinner and a few evenings during the week, and they would go on family outings. Frankie would have moved back in with Bridget, and their relationship would have been stronger than ever. Frankie would have eventually worked her way up to be a top-notch lawyer, and I would like to think that Frankie would help some of her friends who were still in Wentworth with some legal advice. Of course, Frankie probably wouldn't have been able to represent anyone who she had a friendship or connection with in Wentworth due to the ethics, but Frankie could have got one of her lawyer friends to take on any of the cases, someone who would have done a brilliant job. Frankie and Bridget would have been really shocked to hear about the siege happening at Wentworth during season 7, and they would have been glued to the news and ringing the prison for constant updates. Frankie would have been really gutted to hear about Liz passing away, and being even more shocked that it was Boomer who had done it. Now, I reckon Frankie would have gone to Liz's funeral, and she would have seen Sophie and Artie there, and Frankie would have been over the moon to learn that Sophie has turned her life around after prison. Frankie then would have gone over to Sophie at the graveside and said, you do your mum proud. Also, at Liz's funeral, there would be a very upset Doreen, and Vera, I reckon, would also be there. There would have been a really nice little catch-up between them all, where they would be reminiscing the good times that they had with Liz. Frankie and Bridget would then go and visit baby Grace a few days after the funeral to meet her for the first time, and Frankie and Bridget would keep in touch with Vera from time to time, as Bridget, she was once friends with Vera. Frankie would also be keeping in touch with Doreen through video chat, and she would often see Joshua bouncing around in Doreen's living room. Frankie and Bridget would be very shocked when they saw on the news about Joan Ferguson being alive and is returning to Wentworth. Wentworth, and I reckon it would have shook them up a little bit knowing that Joan Ferguson has been out there on the run all this time when they all thought that she was dead. The biggest shock for Frankie and Bridget is when they learn that Wentworth has been destroyed in an explosion, but they will be over the moon to learn that none of their friends have been killed. Now I reckon Frankie would eventually propose to Bridget and they would get married on the beach with their family and all of their old Wentworth friends all around them. A happy ending for one of Wentworth's finest couples. And that was my ranking special on Franky Doyle. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comments box below if you agree with some of my points in this video, and let me know if you think that I missed anything out. You know how much I love reading your comments, so get typing. Okay then guys, well thank you all for watching. I will catch you all next time.